Hey, what's going on guys? Welcome back to another video. So in this video, I'm going to be covering movement number 1, which is the free squat. Now, if you caught my previous video, which was the 5 basic flexibility movements you need in order to be a human being, you would have seen that I covered the basics of what you need in order to get into the free squat. So in this one, I'm just going to go over a couple of stretches that will help you out to improve the depth and the range of motion in your squat. So what is it about the squat that we really struggle in the Western world to get into? Now, the only thing I can put it down to is, obviously, like I mentioned in the previous video, we spend a large portion of our time sat on a chair. And because we're in that L-based position, it doesn't seem like we are benefiting from being sat in that position for extended periods of time. You know, a lot of people these days have office jobs and they spend most of their lives almost 8 hours, 9 hours a day sat in that L position at work, plus spending a large portion of that time even at home. So we're looking around 3/4 of your time sat in that position during the day. So it's no wonder that we've lost that squat position. Now, if you look at 2/3 of the world's population, you'll see that most people spend most of their time in this position. They defecate in this position, they eat in this position, and they also socialize in this position. So why is not having the free squat ability a problem? Well, we know through the typical problems that we suffer in the West, the low back pain, the knee pain, the hip pain, etc. that I mentioned in the previous video, this is something that shouldn't happen to us. So if you compare people that are in their 20s to their 30s, and you compare the same people from the other side of the world in poorer countries where they utilize that squat position, you'll see that those people have extremely amazing level of flexibility and mobility in those ranges. However, people from the West tend to really struggle to get into that deep squat compressed position. So before we get into the stretches, I just want to talk about how to really approach the process of stretching. Our focus is to try and get as relaxed as possible in the stretch that we're performing. So if at any point the stretch becomes too intense, feel free to reduce the intensity of the stretch by easing off slightly. And if you feel as though you can go a little deeper and you feel relaxed, then go a little deeper with the stretch. So the first stretch we're going to go into is the lying wall squat. So for this one, you're basically going to need a yoga mat or something to place on the ground so that you're not uncomfortable whilst doing the stretch. Then you're going to take that to the wall. You're going to slide one of your glutes against the wall, roll over so your back is flat against the wall and your feet are in front of you. Ideally, we want to try and get our butt as close to the wall as possible when we're doing this. So when you're going into position, try and really get that body close to the wall. Next, we're just going to let our knees fall to the side and feel free to go onto the outside of your feet if you can't get your feet flat on the wall. By going onto the outside of your feet, it really does emphasize the external rotation in the hips and the abduction movement. So whilst you're in position, let the head drop to the ground and try and go as relaxed as possible. Then you're going to bring your elbows in between your knees and you're going to place them on the inside of your knees. Step 1 is to try and get your hands at a praying position in between your knees. For a lot of you, that's going to become really uncomfortable, so try and ease into it. So let your hands be slightly higher up if they need to, and then as you get better with it, push your hands down. So the next step up for the hands is to clench your fists and bring your knuckles together. That will really increase the intensity of the stretch. So if you've got the flexibility to do that, feel free to go into that position. And finally, if you're really comfortable in that position, feel free to separate your hands, slide them down to your shins, and then just push on the inside of the knees using your elbows or your triceps. So in this position, we're going to perform our first PNF contraction. You're basically going to try and push out on the inside of your knees, and you're going to use the glute muscles and the hip flexor muscles to push your knees together. So you're resisting that with your elbows. You're going to hold this for 5 seconds, relax the body, and then take a deep breath in. And as you exhale, you're going to apply a bit of pressure on the inside of our knees, and you're just going to push them out. So then we're going into a bit more abduction. And then once you're in the new position, again, try and relax the body and just get used to the sensations that you're experiencing. So contraction number 2, you're going to move the hands to the outside of the knees. And this time you're going to try and push the knees together using your palms, and you're going to resist that with your hip flexor muscles and the glute muscles. Again, you're going to perform that for 5 seconds. You're going to take a deep breath in, and then as you exhale, you're going to move your hands to the inside of your knees, and then you're going to gently push outwards on the inside of the knee. So again, we're creating more abduction in the hip. Now, if at any point you feel as though this stretch is too intense, feel free to reduce the amount of pressure that you put on the inside of your knees. We're going to hold this stretch for anything between 1.5 minutes and 2 minutes. And if you feel comfortable, then feel free to go up to about 4 to 5 minutes. Stretch number 2 is the sumo squat. Now you're basically going to get into a comfortable standing position, keep your feet about hip width apart, then you're going to turn your feet out once, so your toes are pointing outwards, then you're going to turn the heels out, toes out, heels out, and then finally one more position, toes out again. And then you're just going to sink the hips down as low as possible into a comfortable, deep sumo squat. Next, you're going to place your hands on your knees and you're going to keep those arms as straight as possible. Shrug the shoulders in order to secure that position. And then you're going to support the weight of your upper body on those hands and arms. From here, we're just going to bend our knees side to side just to see if we can get any more extra range in that sumo squat position. From here, we're going to perform a PNF contraction. Now, this is based on Kit Laughlin's method, so if you haven't checked him out, I would highly recommend you check out his stuff. So all we're doing here is we're basically pulling our knees apart using our glute muscles. By doing that, we're going to invoke a stretch in the hip flexor muscles and especially in the external rotators of our hips. Then you're going to relax, you're going to take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, we're going to try and sink those hips a little lower. And feel free just to move your hips side to side like we did at the start, just to see if you can get any extra depth. So from here, we're just going to go on to contraction number 2. We're going to move our hands to the inside of our thighs. Now, depending on what's comfortable for you, you might prefer to rest your elbows on the inside of your thighs or your triceps. This time round, we're going to try and push out using our elbows or our triceps, and you're going to try and resist that using your thighs. So you're going to try and squeeze those thighs together. Again, do this for 5 seconds, relax, take a deep breath in, and as you exhale, let those hips sink a little deeper. And then finally, just to exit, place your hands on the ground and bring your feet together and stand yourself up. Stretch number 3 is the 3-position calf stretch. Now for this stretch, you're basically going to need a box or something to elevate the feet. You can also use a step up or the last step of your staircase as well. So to get started, you're going to stand on your box. You're going to take your back leg and you're going to place the foot halfway at the back edge of the box, so the heel is hanging off the edge. Then you're going to push the weight through the heel, and we're just going to perform a dorsiflexion movement, so then we're stretching all the muscles in the calf. We're going to use that front leg as a support, so what I want you to do is bend the knee and just keep that in position on the side, so then you're not falling off balance. If you feel like you're not getting any stretch in the calf, feel free to go into an anterior pelvic tilt, and we're just going to hinge at the hip, and you're just imagining that you're trying to get your chest closer to the ground. Make sure you're straightening your back when you're performing this. This should hopefully create a stronger stretch in the calf muscle as well. So it's either you perform the anterior pelvic tilt or you just push your weight through the heel. Make sure that your knee is locked out, and that way we're really getting that maximum effect in the stretch. Once you've done this, you're going to turn your foot inwards, so the toes are going inwards and the heel is going outwards, and we're going to perform the same movements again. And finally, you're going to turn the foot out, so the toes go out and the heel goes in, and we're just doing the same thing again. Now, to get the maximum benefit of this stretch, I recommend you hold this stretch for anything between 60 seconds to 90 seconds on each of the positions. Feel free to shake your foot off in between each of the sets, and then swap over and do it on the opposite leg as well. Now, I think I learned this stretch from a guy called Emmett Lewis, and I've been doing this for the last 2 or 3 years, so it's become a huge staple for me to gain more flexibility in my calves. Stretch number 4 is the standing pigeon stretch. Now for this, we need an object that's about hip height. So if you've got a plyometric box at home, that'd be perfect, or if not, you can use the side of your bed or the side of your kitchen table as well. To get into position, we're basically going to position one of our legs on top of the box, and then all you want to do here is hinge at the hip, and we're just going to tip our chest down closer to the ground. So this stretch targets the piriformis muscle, which is the outer muscle of your hip. To get the maximum benefit of this stretch, we want to create an anterior pelvic tilt again. So that way we're really emphasizing the stretch in the piriformis muscle. Again, we're going to perform 2 contractions whilst we're in position. Contraction number 1 is you're pressing the outside of the foot into the box or the elevated surface that you're using. And then contraction number 2 is going to press the knee into the box or the object that you're using as well. Once you've performed the contractions, we want to recheck our form. So you're going to go back into that anterior pelvic tilt. So you're shooting that bum out, lengthen the spine, and then we're just going to tip at the hinge and get our chest lower to the ground. Now a quick tip is if you're really struggling to get that leg on top of that elevated surface, feel free to reduce the height of that surface. So maybe use a dining table or a stool, or even your sofa would be fine as well. And finally, stretch number 5 is the internal hip stretch. Now, for this stretch, like the name says, we're going to stretch the muscles on the inside of the hip. Because we performed a lot of external rotation and abduction, we also want to perform adduction and internal rotation of the hip. So, to get into position, you're going to sit on something that will elevate your bottom off the ground. So a cushion or a bolster will do fine. Place the hands behind you, rest them on the ground, and then from here, you're just going to lean back. With your legs, you're going to keep them bent in front of you. And all we're going to do here is we're going to turn our feet on the inside. So we're just collapsing those arches. So we're supporting the weight on the inside of our feet. From here, we're just going to move our hips side to side. So we're going to perform that internal rotation and adduction, and then external rotation and abduction, just so that we create more range in the inside of our hips. Once you've done this a couple of times, you're going to take one of your hands off the ground. So you're going to support the weight on the other hand. Then you're going to place that hand on the outside of one of your knees. So if you're using your right hand, you're placing your hand on the outside of your right knee. Next, we're going to go into the deepest range of our internal rotation. And then we're just going to try push a little bit of pressure through the outside of our knee. And you're going to resist that with your hip flexor muscles, and you're going to push out. So you're performing external rotation whilst you're stopping that with your hand and pushing the knee down. By doing this, you're going to invoke a contraction in those muscles. And like we did previously, you're going to hold that for 5 seconds, relax, take a deep breath in, and then as you exhale, you're going to take the hand away, place it back where it was before, and then you're going to use the internal rotation muscles to bring that knee down and closer to the ground. You're going to do the same thing on the opposite side as well. And feel free to cycle through these contractions as many times as you want. Also, when you're performing this contraction, don't perform it as hard as possible. Try and be a bit more gentle with the pressure that you put on the outside of your knees. So those are my 5 stretches to help you get deeper into the squat position. Now, the way I would approach these stretches is perform the squat and then perform these stretches, and then retest the squat and see how low you can get with your squat depth. Obviously, you won't see a massive amount of progress straight away, so try and stay consistent with these stretches and make sure that you are recording your progress. Thank you so much for watching this video. Again, if you've got any questions, feel free to drop them down below in the comment section. Also, I want to know how your progress is going, so feel free to drop that down below in the comment section too. That's pretty much it. Remember to hit that like button and that subscribe button to be notified when the next video is coming out, and I will see you in the next one.